Good day. Welcome. This is your Daily Med with Lady V. Today we look at St. Mark chapter 11, verse 15 through 19. We will also look at the first account of this story in St. John chapter 2. So it says in St. Mark 11, verse 15, on reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, and would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. And as he taught them, he said, "Is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers." The chief priests and the teachers of the law heard this and began looking for a way to kill him, for they feared him, because the whole crowd was amazed at his teaching. It says, when evening came, Jesus and his disciples went out of the city. And we will also look at the account in St. John chapter 2, verse 13 through 18. At the outset of Jesus' public ministry, Jesus came to the temple. And when he got there, he saw what was happening that he did not like. So beginning at this point, after his first miracle at Cana at Galilee, as we say, when he came to the temple, he found that the people had made this place into a marketplace. Oxen and sheep and doves were being sold there, and the money changers were carrying on their business as well. And Jesus really did not like it. So he came. There were the animals. These animals were sold to the worshippers as their sacrifice. The money changers took the money of those who came from the foreign countries and changed it into the money of Jerusalem, which was the local money. And he took the money from the pilgrims, and they did it for profit. Plenty of money they were making on their money. And so Jesus says, listen, this is too much unfairness, too much business. And we see in the first account how he plaited a whip and threw them out of the temple. It says that Jesus drove the money changers from the temple in St. John 2. He says, when it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, Jesus went up to Jerusalem in the temple courts and found people selling cattle, sheep and dove, and others sitting at the table exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. To those who sold doves he said, "Get these out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a marketplace." His disciples remembered it. It is written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." The Jews then responded to him, "What sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all this?" So this was the first incident when Jesus Christ came publicly on the scene. He went to the temple like anybody else who would. It was the time of Passover. Here again, this time, on his last week in his earthly ministry, he came back to Jerusalem, to the temple, and the same thing was happening again. And we see this account in St. Mark 11, verse 15 through 19. Jesus came just like he came on the first time when his ministry began. Now his ministry is drawing to a close, and he came back to the temple, entered the courts of the temple, and threw those out who were making profit from sacred activities. He even stopped them from carrying their wares throughout the temple area. Combining quotations from Isaiah and from Jeremiah, he condemned their desecration, their exclusion, their commercialism. And he told them exactly what God intended to happen in the temple. He says the temple should be a house of prayer for all nations. Isaiah 56 and verse 7. So not just a place of prayer for Israel when they gather, but they should pray for all people. But now they have made it a religious marketplace, a hangout for shysters and racketeers. Jeremiah 7 and verse 11. So Jesus says, no, this is not how it ought to be. So he overturned those tables and he threw them out. The Bible even tells us that the disciples realized that this was already predicted or written in the Psalm. The zeal for God's house. Jesus had a righteous indignation with that zeal that he has for his Father's house because of what was taking place. As usual, the scribes and the chief priests are now mad. They are deeply disturbed of what he said, and they were now conspiring to get him. They were saying, we have to do something about him. But even then, they were still afraid because they knew that there were great number of people who still stand in awe of who Messiah is. So we see on both accounts, even in the first incident, they asked Jesus, the Jews responded to him, what sign can you show us to prove that you have the authority to come here and to do all this? Remember, Jesus Christ has the authority. It is his house. It is his temple. And we see where he says in St. Matthew that he cleansed the temple. And in that account, it says after that was done, and he told them exactly what the temple was for, they brought the sick and they brought the lame. And the Bible says he healed every one of them. Even children were given praise and worship unto him in the house of God. Today, as he says to us, our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit whose we are. Therefore, our body must be cleansed. This temple that we are continuously must be presented to him for cleansing. In the physical temple, he cleansed it once. He at the beginning of his ministry, and he told them the purpose for the temple. He went about for another 3 years, and he did his earthly ministry. And here he is at the end of his ministry. He comes back to the temple, and the same thing that he cleansed it for the first time was happening again. It means that they didn't continuously pay attention to that which he said the first time and use it for its rightful purpose, which is to be a place where prayer is offered for all nations, where the sick would come and get healing, and where praise and thanksgiving would continuously be offered in the temple. Yet they make it into a marketplace, as he says, a den of thieves, a den of robbers, because what the people were doing for excessive profit, they were robbing the other people, especially the pilgrims who came along that couldn't bring animals for sacrifice from all the way that they have traveled to come to Jerusalem for the Passover. Today, we learn from the story, from both the one at the beginning and the cleansing at the end, that unless we are continuously cleansed, then we will do that which the master does not require. We will use the temple, our own temple, our body, or even the physical temple for that which is not the right purpose. But may we use it for the right purpose, and that is to pray for all nations. We will pray that the sick will be healed. We will teach even children to praise and to worship God. And we will understand that Jesus Christ has authority over everything upon the earth, to include his temple, because it belongs to him. God bless you. Thank you again for watching, and may God bless the USA.